I really like the idea that somebody who's doing Pilates for the first time should have a feeling of success as early on as possible. And the way that I used to teach would have been to introduce things like pelvic rocks and bridges and so on, which I think, even though they may be quite straightforward exercises, can actually be slightly perplexing sometimes for people who maybe don't have any kind of movement background, and there's not necessarily a lot of clarity around whether they're doing it well or not. So for people who are new to Pilates, who it seems need to have some tangible success early on to build their confidence and maybe encourage them with the idea that Pilates will be useful for them, and also for people who come in with non-specific low back pain or any kind of thing which looks like they could do with more lumbar stability and more capacity to dissociate their hips. This is a strategy that I really like to use. So their feet are planted on the ground, knees bent makes for less variables, I think, in the first place. And then initially maybe they have their hands on their legs or on the side of the Cadillac or whatever they might be sitting on, and their spine stays long. And the goal is for them to produce a pure hinge from their hip joints. So spine and pelvis move as one piece. And if it seems like they need a little bit more feedback for what's going on, then one hand in their lower back and the other hand on their abdomen seems to be a really useful cue for themselves. If I start to change the shape of my lower back now, it's pretty clear pretty quickly. I'm perched on the edge of the Cadillac, so I can actually feel my sit bones as I sit back onto them and kind of offloading them. So the motion of my pelvis around my legs is a little bit clearer than if I was sitting further back. And as a kind of intro to the hip hinge, if that's going well, then we can add some weight to it. So I would encourage them to actually hold the weight against their breastbone so it doesn't become an arm or shoulder challenge. And an emphasis on driving their feet into the floor, particularly through the up phase, seems to make posterior chain connections a little bit more tangible. So that's what I would think of as level 1 and maybe level 1A of hip hinging, which is a hugely valuable skill to learn early on in your Pilates journey, I would suggest.